Hello, my name is Jim Gitney. I'm the CEO of Group50 Consulting. Thank you for joining me today and for spending the next 20 minutes with me to talk about the business hierarchy of needs. But before we do, let's talk about some sobering statistics. 90% of the companies do a poor job executing their strategy. We've leaned companies down to the point where there's barely enough people to do day-to-day operations, let alone spend significant amounts of time on thinking about the future or working on the company instead of working in the company. 60% of organizations don't link their financial budgets to their strategic priorities, let alone cascade those down throughout the organization. This next one is unique to us because we require all of our clients to have one most important goal. Why? Because old wisdom was that you could have 3 to 5, but that has a tendency to scatter your thinking. We believe that there is one primary reason that businesses exist, and that needs to be thought through and created so that as we develop and build strategies, we think about the needs of the organization, we have one goal that's a litmus test for everything we do. As a matter of fact, I've even joked with some people that the most important goal is today's politically correct way to say no. Now, when we talk about manufacturing and distribution companies, which is my area of expertise, we need to take into consideration something called Industry 5.0. We'll talk a little more about Industry 5.0, but let me share with you that it is entirely technology driven. As a matter of fact, we're going as far as suggesting that organizations should be built around technologies rather than building technologies around organization. More on that in the future. 80% of mergers and acquisitions don't realize their intended objectives, primarily because of the reasons above. So if you're the leader of an organization or a member of a C-suite or a member of a board of directors, think about the answer to the question below. Are you, your team, and your company part of these statistics? And if they are, what are you going to do about it? So what happens when you are part of those statistics? When you haven't executed your strategy well, perhaps you don't even have one that's well thought through, you end up with something that we call anti-strategy. You have a lot of well-meaning people inside the organization who are wondering when, where, why, what, who, how. All of us, especially high potential people, feel like we have a need to do something. So oftentimes I'll find myself in a meeting with somebody and hear one of my contemporaries go, well, you know, we significantly reduced the working capital inside the supply chain, down 15%. We've optimized our supply chain. And if I'm in marketing and sales, I'm sitting here thinking, yeah, but you've significantly reduced our service levels. So it's incredibly important that there be a well thought through supply chain. A well thought through strategy that everyone understands. And so now they have the most important goal and the strategy as a litmus test to bounce what they want to do against. Now, why the business hierarchy of needs? Well, you know, there are lots of really good individual pieces. We hear people talk about implementation, continuous improvement. We hear people talk about, you know, organizational optimization and organizational development. And we hear people talk about strategy, and we hear people talk about mission, vision, and values, but they're typically all discussed in a vacuum. The business hierarchy of needs pulls all of these things together, including the needs of Industry 5.0 and the future of technology around artificial intelligence, blockchain, IoT, and it asks the appropriate question during the strategic planning process on how these things fit inside your organization, how these things will be able to differentiate you in the future. The business hierarchy of needs provides boards of directors and senior leadership teams a fundamental framework for creating strategy and identifying the steps to move from the current state to an optimal future state. And if you do all of these things that we're going to talk about in the next few minutes, you will develop a culture of strategic execution that is both sustainable and scalable. What is the business hierarchy of needs? Well, it's a change management framework supported by many, many tools and methodologies. It's first developed by me in 2013. I was fortunate enough to get a trademark in 2015, something I'm very proud of. And it's something that we use with every one of our clients when we talk about creating a new strategy, or when we talk with them about understanding the effectiveness of their existing strategy and where they may have operating or strategic gaps. It has 3 levels of activity. Data planning analysis, which is the creation of the foundation of a company's future state. Knowledge and change management, which is how am I going to change my organization? What does it need to look like? What skills do I need? Do I have the appropriate people? Have I optimized my talent? Do I have a culture of accountability inside my organization? And then the last is implementation. And I think we can agree that each one of these 3 levels are significantly different. They're very unique. They have different ownership inside the organization, and they also have unique languages, which we'll talk about in a second. The business hierarchy of needs is supported by our strategic framework called Where to Play and How to Win. Now, why do we use the words where to play and how to win? Well, the strategy, business strategies and tactics define where to play. What markets am I going to be in? What channels of distribution am I going to use? What products am I going to move into the marketplace? What's my value proposition? How to win is all of the things that we need to do tactically in order to be able to realize our strategic future. And what's nice about where to play and how to win is everybody understands that, from the stockroom to the boardroom. We've all grown up having to contemplate where to play and how to win. Lastly, but certainly not the least important, is effective leadership and engagement. And this is especially critical for today's younger workforce, where they believe that they need to be involved. They need to understand what they are part of and what bigger meaning or bigger objective they're part of accomplishing. Because once you get past their financial satisfaction, you need to keep them engaged. They need to feel like they're part of something bigger. And so this last bullet really spends time on that topic. So please don't underestimate employee engagement and leadership, effective leadership. Now, let's talk about the 3 levels and the 3 languages of the business hierarchy of needs. Data analysis and planning. Set the foundation. Understand your mission, vision, values, leadership traits. Understand what you're going to build your future state on. Knowledge and change management. We've talked about this. What are the things you're going to do? And what does that change management roadmap look like? Implementation. Create an environment of continuous improvement based on global best practices and process reengineering. Now, if we go back, I think you'll agree that strategy and the development of a strategic plan has a unique language. Members of the board and senior leadership talk about 5 forces analysis, talk about SWOT, talk about market research, talk about mission, vision, value. All of those things that are incredibly important to the foundation are the unique language of the C-suite and the board of directors. When I go to change management, think about that for a second. That's a completely different language as well, because I'm not talking about five forces analysis anymore. I'm talking about skills maps. I'm talking about talent optimization. I'm talking about compensation. So that's a really unique language as well that fits in the middle of the organization, what we like to call middle management. If you talk about implementation, we're talking about all of the things associated with stakeholders doing the tactical things they need to do in order to implement the strategy. So notice I said stakeholders. Whereas before I was talking about employees. I'm going to expand that now, because level 3 is not just about employees. It's about third-party service providers. It's about vendors. It's about contractors. It's about temps. It's about all levels of the organization. And perhaps in some instances, distributors, 3PLs, and customers. And so when we talk about the language of implementation, we're talking about Six Sigma, we're talking about process reengineering, we're talking about value stream mapping, all things that people in the, all other stakeholders clearly understand, but clearly need to know how to do. Yet another language. At the end of the day, strategic execution requires a holistic approach that focuses on everyone, on developing and improving business processes that are required to consistently execute a company strategy. That's what we call developing a culture of strategic execution. Let's spend a couple of minutes on each one of the levels in some more detail. Now, you'll notice that this slide might be a little bit busy, but let's talk about ownership. The majority of level 1 data analysis and planning is owned by the C-suite and the board of directors. They are the ones who understand the language, and they are the ones who need to translate that language into strategies and tactics. And often there are important components of middle management that are involved in this as well. Requires that leadership create and understand the foundation that they've created and have pulled together the resources, the tactics, the approvals, the finances, et cetera, that they need in order to be able to build on this foundation. And this foundation is incredibly important, or especially critical, for digital or industrial transformations and the integration of acquired companies. Now, if we talk about level 2, knowledge and change management, you'll see that ownership has changed. While there's still a significant amount of ownership by the C-suite, we're now talking about the majority of the ownership going to middle management. They need to be able to understand how to organize around technologies, around strategies, around markets, how to implement new products, where to manufacture them, what does the supply chain look like? Those are all things that are all part of a change management process. And there's a unique language there as well. It's all focused on equipping the organization with the right people, structure, and skills. And they need to have the skills to close existing operating gaps and strategic gaps. This is often times where you get into the discussion around, where do I need subject matter experts that I don't have in the organization? What consulting firms will be able to provide those subject matter experts to me? Who do I rely on to give me the bench strength that I need to move the strategic plan forward and to optimize the business? Most important here is the organization roadmap. The roadmap that defines what the organization structures are going to look like over time, but also the skills maps that are required in order to be able to fill those structures and then also be able to successfully navigate the needs of the business. Level 3, as you can see, is still somewhat owned by the C-suite and middle management, but their role is more fiduciary in that their role is to fund the implementation, to provide the resources to make the implementation happen, and to clear roadblocks. While all of the other stakeholders are working on continuous improvement, process re-engineering, implementing best practices, new technologies, and a new concept inside of Industry 5.0 called cobotics. That's a collaboration between humans and robots. And we're finding a lot of applications for that idea inside of manufacturing and distribution. At the end of the day, all of the organizational operational tools that are required to be successful need to exist here, and that's going to require a unique language. Think about training around continuous improvement. Think about training around Six Sigma. Think about training around the DMAIC process. All things that this level needs to understand, and as I pointed out, another, what we call the operational language. Now, let's talk about supporting tools. While we have a whole bunch of things listed inside this pyramid, let's talk about the tools needed for data planning analysis. Well, you need to have a strategic framework. So while business hierarchy of needs is your change management framework, you need to have a recipe for how are you going to create your strategic plan. And we have a strategic planning playbook that supports the concept of Strategy 5.0. Strategy 5.0 is about the business solutions that are needed for future scalability and sustainability inside of organizations. We need to have a process around strategic planning. We need to have other tools and assessments that are required in order to build that strong foundational base. Pest analysis, SWOT, 5 forces, inflection points. And we've built the company physical with over 50 workshops and assessments that are part of Strategy 5.0 in the business hierarchy of needs. Around level 2, knowledge and change management, well, we need to be able to assess the organizational capability. We need to understand, what is our organization currently capable of? We need to be able to put together learning maps, do organizational design, understand the talent of our existing leaders inside the organization through PI or the Henderson individual and team assessments. Need to know how to cascade objectives. And oftentimes people chuckle when I say that because, that's pretty easy. Okay, that's pretty easy. When we get down to trying it, everyone all of a sudden realizes it's a lot more difficult than you might imagine. And then the general idea of change management. And if you're going to have a significant shift in your business structure design, we highly recommend that you consider a PMO structure where all improvement activities, continuous improvement, digital transformation, new technology implementations all report under one office so that you get a consistent approach and the appropriate accountability inside the organization. Lastly, but not least, implementation. How many people know how to do value stream mapping effectively? How many people know how to apply Kaizen and some of the other tools that are critical to making significant change inside a business? How many people know how to properly implement a new technology, redesign processes, or use strategic execution software? These are all of the things that need to be part of your roadmap, all of the things we need to talk about and discuss as you move from level 1 to level 2 to level 3. And so when you are talking inside your organization about the business hierarchy of needs, make sure that conversation includes the who am I going to work with, who has all of these tools that we can use to successfully implement our strategy. Now, what I want to do is put together our summary slide, which is about the business hierarchy of needs with everything together. And I'll just leave you with this thought. Strategic execution requires a holistic approach that focuses everyone, employees, vendors, contractors, and temps, on developing and improving business processes that are required to consistently execute a company strategy. So let's talk about why Group 50. Hey, business hierarchy of needs is yours. I offer it freely. You're welcome to use it inside your organization. But if you need help defining the steps or implementing, if you want to use it on implementing a new strategy and you want a new strategic planning process, give us a call because we have the ability to help you there. If you want to use the business hierarchy of needs as a litmus test against the efficacy of your existing strategy, feel free to do so. But at the end of the day, we've built the business hierarchy of needs, a strategic planning process, and all of the tools to support it and to leave your organization with the skills necessary to use them. I'm Jim Gitney. I'm the founder and CEO of Group50. It's been a pleasure spending these few minutes with you. And please feel free to give me a call if you think you want to talk about strategy. Have a great day.